because I promised my friend Desire that I would read this. First, just want to say it's a false dichotomy that people who do this work are also victims and have also lost loved ones. I send out my love to folks who've experienced that. Okay. They made me take off my clothes. I couldn't keep the hair tie on my hair or the shoes on my feet. They dressed me in a green padded suit with holes for the arms and Velcro closure. The cement floor numbed my toes as I walked barefoot from the 7th floor to the 1st floor, where they put me in a holding tank alone. No one would tell me what was happening or how long I had to stay. I tried to use the phone, but was yelled at. I just needed help. I needed someone to listen to me, someone to care about me. This went on for 7 hours and still my tears wouldn't dry. When the doctor asked me if I wanted to kill myself, I said I didn't know how to answer that question. The training sergeant badgered me to answer and taunted me for crying. Quote, I don't know how to answer the question because I would rather be dead than in here. But no, I'm not actively trying to kill myself. For 3 years, 651 I Street was my home, not because I was guilty of a crime, but because I wasn't a millionaire and couldn't post bail. For 3 years, I was victimized by the jail staff and witnessed countless acts of inhumanity. I did not receive adequate medical or mental health treatment, nor did I receive services upon release. I was talked down to, called names, refused services, and treated less than a person. The sheriff wants to build a new jail, but that couldn't possibly solve the problems at hand. The jails are overpopulated, and they always claim to be short-staffed. Requests to see medical can take several weeks if you get called at all. They don't allow you to clean regularly or provide you with chemicals that kill the spread of bacteria or infectious disease. They don't always provide access to showers, and if you do not have money on your books, they do not provide you with enough hygiene products to last a full week. The jail has eliminated the majority of their programs, or the service providers no longer wish to contract with the sheriff. No, not only are the staff treating the inmates terribly, but they aren't offering them any form of rehabilitation services. People are being locked in cages and not cared for. A deputy once said to me, I'll see you when you come back, to which I replied, this is my first and last time here. You won't see me back. They have the mentality that everyone is a repeat offender. They choose to treat people with disrespect rather than provide them resources and a plan on how to get out and stay out. If the county invested in preventative measures rather than throwing people in jail, the recidivism rates would drastically decrease. The people behind those walls are people. They are our neighbors, sons, daughters, and our friends. These people should not be written off or locked up or given up on. It is possible to get out and never come back. That should be their mission, to ensure people receive the mental health care and housing and employment services they need so they can integrate back into society and never come back. I'll give the rest to someone else to read.
Okay, very good.
Hello, I'm going to use my time to finish reading the commentary that Liz was reading like 45 minutes ago.
All right.
Instead, they are choosing to treat people like animals.
And you're Rachel? You're Rachel?
Yes, I'm
okay,
Rachel, sorry.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Rachel.
Instead, they are choosing to treat people like animals, cage and release them with nothing, forcing them to return out of desperation and a means to survive in a system that failed them. A new jail will not provide services to people in crisis or those being released. A new jail will not reduce the population or keep the community more safe. A new jail will not train the staff to treat people with dignity and respect. The sheriff wants to create the illusion that this new jail will solve everything. The reality is you can change the external walls, but until you change the staff and the services inside, nothing will actually change. They need to work on themselves internally and help the community, not cage it. The sheriff should focus their monetary resources and efforts on recreating the narrative the police have in our communities. They should help people and not harm them. They should protect and serve. I've witnessed the most horrific crimes committed by the police themselves. In 2019, a lady went into labor in her jail cell and the staff ignored the emergency button and her screams of terror for 45 minutes. The baby died and I watched the deputy walk its lifeless body out of the jail cell, wrapped in a paper bag like a piece of trash. I still have nightmares to this day, and the echoes of that woman's screams plague my memory. That was the worst crime I saw committed in jail, and that deputy went home to their family that night. Jail is not rehabilitating. Jails damage and destroy. Our community is in crisis, and there are resources available to help. These resources need to be allocated to the people and not to a building that has statistically done more harm than help. When I was released from prison, Decarcerate Sacramento gave me $1,200 stipend. With that money, I was able to purchase a vehicle to get to work. Now I am in a position where I can offer a second chance to someone like me who was failed by the system, but won't be defeated. A new jail will not save these people. People need healing and resources for stability and a means to maintain it all. The ground in the jail will always be cold. It doesn't matter how shiny it is. Sincerely, not another statistic.
Thanks, Rachel. Rachel.
Hi, my name's Andi. I use he, him pronouns. I live in District 3, and I have a degree in criminology law and society from the University of California, Irvine. I also work at Social Justice Politicor, tracking this county's commitment to upholding social justice values. Today, I will continue to say that this county demonstrates little to no interest in enacting socially just policies or to communal equity of any kind. I'm also going to talk about mental health and urge you not to move forward with a jail expansion. It's painfully clear that the stated need to expand the jail in order to provide adequate mental health treatment and fulfill the consent decree isn't the real reason this discussion is happening. This isn't about mental health, and there are numerous other reasons why an expansion is unnecessary to meet the requirements of the consent decree, as we've heard and will continue to hear during public comment today. This is about the continued oppression of our underserved, marginalized, vulnerable, and exploited community members. This is about the dual arms of capitalism and white supremacy moving in tandem to ensure that the members of our society who have power keep it, grow it, and consolidate it, and those without it are pushed further towards the margins of society. If this conversation was actually about healing our community and treating mental illness, we would talk about the fact that 60% of folks in jail having a mental illness means that they are not receiving effective treatment within our community. That number simply wouldn't exist were people actually being cared for the way they need to be in our community outside of jail walls. The meager, if not non-existent, mental health care folks in jail receive or are supposed to receive and not provided with is the treatment they have found. It is the kind of treatment they have access to. If our jail facilities are providing mental health care for our community members, it is a sign that we have massively failed in our duty to provide for the health and well-being of our community. We have clear evidence that people in need of help are not finding it outside the jails and instead are being swept up into our sprawling system of mass incarceration. Setting aside the innumerable problems with this jail expansion proposal and with the criminal injustice system in general, including who we label as criminals and why, the unbelievable amount of money we spend on carceral systems, and the never-ending human rights violations, the argument that these beds will facilitate mental health treatment and presumably reduce recidivism is patently false. Let's say that this annex was truly an attempt to respond to folks in our community suffering from mental illness. Even if this were the case, jail beds will never be the way to provide treatment. It is both ineffective and unethical. Jails are criminogenic, despite the widely understood belief in our society that putting people in jail keeps us safe. That couldn't be further from the truth. The presence of these warehouses we throw people into makes us all less safe because these institutions do nothing to help people recover, heal, change, or grow. Currently, 55% of people booked are released within 3 days, often without any supportive services. Holding someone in a cell for 3 days, disrupting their life, housing, employment, and connection to family and friends simply won't solve any problems. It can't, it's not designed to. Thus, the cycle of people coming in and out of jail and not receiving the help they need continues. So, what does this mean? It means releasing people from jail. It means providing mental health diversion programs as alternatives to incarceration. It means funding our community-based mental health treatment programs and centers. It means investing in housing, public health, and healthcare. It means investing in people and divesting from the sheriff and more broadly from the criminal and justice system.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Again, please. Okay.
Carlos Molina.
Yeah, Carlos, good.
Good evening, supervisors. I love the technical arguments and the policy things, so I think that filled the room. So I'm going to just share a little bit about myself. I grew up in Alkali Flats, a neighborhood just adjacent to here. And in many spaces of my neighborhood, you could actually see the county jail. And cops would come by our neighborhood, especially during gentrification when I was much younger. And they would say, you know, what are you doing? What's going on? And sometimes we would run because we would see other people run. And when the cops showed up, it never left us with smiles. And so we would run and they would say things and they would catch us eventually and they would say, you want me to take you to jail? At the time I was an adolescent, I didn't know I couldn't go, but man, that pumped fear in me. When a grown adult with status and authoritative appeal is telling a child, do you want me to take you there? And you know how powerful these people could be when they just grab people from your community, search them in front of you, and sometimes take them away for long periods at a time. It's just painful to think about a childhood experience of mine and others that grew up with me have had to endure by police officers. But I'm glad I got raised in a household where they said, it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. Because the whole time those officers, while they were circling our neighborhood, many of my childhood friends that grew up in the Section 8 apartments just down the way, they needed tutors. They needed counselors. They needed adults that were going to set positive role models. And while later in life I asked myself, imagine, and I allowed myself to imagine a community where services like that were as plentiful as law enforcement officers, what we could have been. I was fortunate to know, and at that time I do forgive those officers, they weren't talking to a hoodlum even though I was called a hoodlum. They weren't talking to a Central boy even though I was referred to as a Central boy. They weren't talking to a thug. They were talking to a future UC Berkeley graduate who graduated with high honors. With high honors. But I wasn't unique, I was just lucky. Supervisor Cerner, you brought our attention to an important thing. We have a scarcity of resources. And what my econ class told me is there was an example between butter and guns. What are you going to buy, butter or guns? In a neighborhood that I grew up, those streets were like quicksand. And what we saw put there were shovels. Shovels to dig ourselves deeper down a hole. And many of us unfortunately did. But imagine if there were ladders. Right now, you're speaking about a budget that's just mind-blowing, $450 million. I know there's a lot of ladders that you could buy with that, like after-school programming, access to mental health, tutoring services. We talk about the children. Someone brought that up. They said, we're speaking about the gang members, but are these criminals? But let's imagine when there were children. So I know my time's up and I'm closing right now. I'm going to tell you, every childhood friend of mine that spent time in that county jail or one of these state prisons, when we were in third grade together and the teacher would ask us, what do you want to be? We would all jump up. We would say, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. Some of us were so imaginative and creative. We said, I want to be a Ninja Turtle. And somewhere down the road, hope was beat out of them. And if they were still in college while I was in college, when they would be asked that same very question, what do you want to be? A lot of times they would shrug their shoulders and they would say, I don't know. I imagine the involvement those law enforcement officers who used to refer to us as thugs and treat us like criminals, how much they played a role in that. How much they played a role in that. So I ask you supervisors, I'm not unique, I'm just lucky. But can you do me a favor and my community a favor and start investing in ladders, because I know of people that want to climb.